Hello, my name's Linda. I'm a UK independent Stampin' Up demonstrator and I'm making a card today using the Jar of Flowers. This is a new stamp set that actually comes out beginning of June, so it will already be out by the time this video comes out. I'm going to be using the jar and this bunch of flowers here today. I'm making an A6 card today and I'm only working in centimetres, so if you'd normally work in inches you can do the same design but you'll have to adjust your measurements slightly. I'm using some Misty Moonlight paper today and Whisper White, and I'm also using some Baker's Twine. This is a new Baker's Twine today, and this is Misty Moonlight with Whisper White and silver thread in it. It's really pretty. And that comes with the Jar of Flowers bundle, so it's available there, and it comes with another 2 ribbons. Really pretty. And I've made a little tiny tag, so I just made this with some Whisper White cardstock and I've just cut that with a pair of scissors and I've stamped hello on there. You can stamp whatever you want. I've used the Well Said stamp set for that. So I'm going to put all of this to one side for a moment. So I'm actually going to start really simple. I've got my A6 card base and my piece of Misty Moonlight. I've cut this at 10 by 14.4 centimetres and I'm just going to stick this to the front of the card base, just using a bit of Tombow. And I've just cut this so there's a tiny border all the way around the card. I have a piece of A6 Whisper White cardstock here and I've put something underneath to protect my table. We're going to be doing some ink blending. So I'm starting with Bermuda Bay and I'm going to just use one of the stamp mounts to push into my ink pad, and then I'm going to take the ink from there with my brush, and this protects your ink pad. So just loading up my brush and start off of the page, so off of the paper, and small circles without pushing too hard onto the page. And I'm just starting at the bottom, so I'm going to then go into Pretty Peacock and then I'm going to finish with Night of Navy. Moving on to Pretty Peacock. Obviously you can use whatever colours you want to use, and I'm just going to put a piece of paper at the top of my card just to hold the card and to protect my hand and the page from ink. So if you are going to use a piece of paper, you must be careful not to put your ink over the edge of the paper because that will leave a line and then you won't get a nice soft blend. So I'm just blending my Pretty Peacock into my Bermuda Bay. So I'm using my Bermuda Bay brush to just blend in some of the Pretty Peacock and the Bermuda Bay just to give a softer line. And now I'm bringing in the Night of Navy and we're going to finish this off at the bottom. It actually will be the top of the card when I finished it. And here's the finished piece of paper. The technique that I'm doing today is going to be using embossing powder, and because of this we need to make sure our paper is dry. So if you use embossing powder on any paper that's the ink's still wet or a bit damp, then it's going to stick to it and it's not going to work. So you need to make sure this is completely dry, or you can actually dry it with your heat tool if you like. I've actually done one yesterday, so I'm going to work on that one today. I'm just going to go over with my embossing buddy to get rid of any dust or grease. So I've panned ahead and I've positioned my stamps into my stamparatus ready to go. So you can do this if you get a piece of scrap paper the same size as our cardstock, and you can decide where you want them to go before we start stamping. So I'm going to put my paper in there and then I'm going to ink up using Versamark. So I'm just going to close this up, and I really took the time to make sure I pushed these down as hard as I could. It's very hard to see once you've done the stamping. So then I'm going to take this this one off and put the next one on. Can't remember what they're called. And then I'm going to ink up again. So I've put all of my pieces all ready to go, and this does make really quick stamping. So I'm just going to flip this over, and on the other side I've actually got the stems of the flowers, and I'm just going to, using my Versamark, do exactly the same. I know you can't actually see what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to use the white embossing powder. This is Stampin' Up embossing powder, and just sprinkling this over so you can actually see what we've been doing. So some of the edges have got some little bits of embossing powder, and I've just got a clean brush that I only ever use for this job. Then we're just going to get the heat tool on here and heat up that embossing powder. Then the Stampin' just pops out at us, looks really lovely. So this is a really pretty stamp set, but sometimes you might not be in the mood for colouring, or perhaps you just don't have the time, and this is just an alternative way of using these without having to colour them in. This piece of cardstock started as an A6 piece, and we want to make it a little bit smaller. So I want to cut 1 centimetre off, so ½ centimetre off of each side of this cardstock. I want the line to go straight across the bottom of the card without these little gaps at the end. So as I said, ½ centimetre off of each side. So that will make the card 9.5 centimetres, and then 13.9 coming down. Before we stick this down to the cardstock, I want to wrap some of the baker's twine that we had earlier around. So I'm just going to wrap this around the cardstock twice, and I've secured with a little bow there at the front, and I've threaded the tag through. So underneath the tag I've just got a mini dimensional, and I'm going to stick that to the card, and then that won't move around then. And then we need to stick this to the card base. I've used double-sided tape here, so I've done 4 strips of double-sided tape on each side. And the reason I've used double-sided tape is because we've been doing embossing, using our heat tool, and this quite often makes your paper warp, and if you're using tape that can stick it down nice and firmly so you don't get any warping when people are looking at your card. So I'm releasing the paper from 2 of the corners, so 2 opposite sides of the corners, and then we're going to position this onto our card. So it leaves you with 2 sticky pieces and then 2 pieces that aren't sticky that you can hold, so then you can decide where you want that card to go without it actually sticking to the page. So when you're happy with where it is, you can push down the 2 pieces that you know are not sticky, and then stick down the sides that are sticky, and then you can just pull your release paper and everything's nice and neat and tidy. As quite often what happens after I've finished making a video, I come up with suggestions of what I would have done if I made this card again, and I don't think I would have used Misty Moonlight because it sort of fades into the background, and I wanted it to pop a little bit more as my layer, so I think I would have used a Bermuda Bay for my layer if I make this card again. So there you go, the card's finished. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and it gives you some ideas. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.